Before we get into today's video, I just want to let you guys know that this video is for educational purposes only. Please remember to be kind to everybody everywhere, in your everyday life, in your home, in the grocery store, and especially in the comment section down below. Please do not show hate to anybody, anywhere. So good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody doing today? I hope you all are having an amazing day. I hope you all have had a wonderful week. Hope everybody is feeling good. So in today's video, I'm worked up about this video. I'm worked up because there is so much new stuff coming out. And you know, if you've ever heard about a situation, you feel like you've heard all of the information about it that there is, but there is actually new stuff coming out. And we're going to talk about it. I feel like this year there's going to be a lot of back and forth when we're talking about Scott. Before we go any further, I did want to stop and thank today's sponsor, Factor. Factor makes meeting your nutrition goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your front door. Factor's team of gourmet chefs create each and every meal using only ingredients with integrity to help you feel your best all day long. And Factor takes the complete stress out of meal planning and helps set you up for success so you can skip the grocery stores and you can skip all the prep work, all of the cooking fatigue, all of the doing the dishes and cleaning up and picking up and sweeping stuff off the countertops. And instead, you can get your delicious meals delivered right to your door. And with over 35 meals to choose from every single week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan, veggie, and protein plus. And if you're looking for gourmet meals, you can try the meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon or shrimp or truffle butter and even broccolini. And we still got some hot summer days ahead of us. So if you do not want to leave the pool or your outdoor activities to have to stop and cook a meal, Factor has got you covered. So if you want to try Factor, all you got to do is go to factor75.com and use code Christina Randall, and you can get 50% off of your first Factor box and 20% off of your next month of orders. Yes, that is code Christina Randall 50 at factor75.com, and you can get 50% off of your first box plus 20% off of your next month's orders today. Thanks again, Factor. Before we start talking about Scott, I do want to tell y'all about this Innocence Project of LA. I always find headlines like this very interesting. So this headline says, report says wrongful convictions cost California $221 million. Now, this article is referring to the numbers that they came up with from 1989 to 2012. Ain't no telling what it is now, okay? But $221 million, but yet the headline says that wrongful convictions cost California $221 million. As in, California has on jeans and can pull a wallet out of its pocket. The headline should actually read, wrongful convictions cost hardworking taxpayers $221 million. You, the people that live there and work there, are having to pay for these wrongful convictions. Back in 2017, Andrew Wilson, a man, was freed after being put into prison and spent 32 years in prison for a wrongful conviction in Los Angeles, California. When he was just 31 years old, he was married, he was a father, and he ended up getting sentenced to life without the possibility of parole for something that he did not do. It was found out that he was indeed innocent, like he always claimed he was over that 30 plus years. And in 2017, he was released, and the Los Angeles City Council approved a $14 million settlement to Andrew, who does go by Andy now. However, $14 million is great and all, but it'll never replace what he lost by being locked up for that many years and losing that portion of his life. However, Andrew, who again goes by Andy now, and I must say, is looking extremely spiffy. When I saw this new photo of him too, I was like, wow, he looks really, really good and handsome. He ended up donating $1 million out of that $14 million to help the Los Angeles Innocence Project. Now, just to be clear, we all hear about like the Innocence Project. This is a total separate thing. This is the Innocence Project of LA, and it started in 2022. So about 2 years ago from me filming this. They have decided to take on Scott Peterson's case, which they seem to really believe that Scott Peterson has evidence or enough evidence to go back to trial and prove that he is innocent and he has been wrongfully convicted. Now, for a brand new Innocence Project, this would be a really big case for them. Just started in 2022, and now they're taking on the Scott Peterson case. I have gone over a lot of this information. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell y'all the whole story to the best of my ability with the public information that is already out there. And then at the end, I'm going to tell y'all if I think this evidence is worth going back to trial in my unprofessional opinion, and if it has changed my mind or what I think really happened between Scott and Laci. So let's just start at the beginning. Scott Peterson was born on October 24th of 1972 to his parents Lee and Jackie in California. Lee owned a packaging company and Jackie owned a boutique. Now, Lee and Jackie had 6 children from previous relationships, and Scott was their only child together. As a matter of fact, everybody that I've seen talk about Scott from that side of the family says that Scott was the golden child, because you got, again, these 2 parents that come together, 6 children in total between the 2 of them, and now they come together and have this one child who is now the golden child. Growing up, Scott wanted to be a professional golfer, and by the age of 14, he was already beating his own father at golf, and at the end of high school, Scott was one of the top junior golfers in San Diego. He was described as a rule follower, a quiet kid, basically like a goody-goody, and again, the golden child. In 1990, Scott went to Arizona State University on a partial golf scholarship. His professors described him as a model student. After transferring to 2 other colleges, Scott ultimately graduated with a degree in agriculture business. Then in 1994, while working at a restaurant called Pacific Cafe, Scott met a beautiful, vibrant, outgoing woman with a big smile named Laci. Laci was born on May 4th of 1975. She was the youngest of 2 children to her parents, Sharon and Dennis. Sharon and Dennis met while they were in high school, and they owned a dairy farm together in California. Together, the 2 of them had Brent, who is Laci's older brother, and then Laci. Growing up, Laci loved to work on the dairy farm, and she also enjoyed working in the garden with her mother. Now, Laci's parents would go on to get a divorce when her and her brother were quite young, and because of this, Laci moved to Modesto, California with her mother and her brother. Laci would still visit the dairy farm on the weekends, so she was still in her biological father's life. Laci's mother went on to get remarried to a man named Ron, and Ron completely stepped in and took on the full-time role of being a father to Laci and to her brother Brent. And Ron was one of those stepfathers that was like the second father, but because he lived with her, he was one of like the, I don't want to disrespect her biological father, but he was living with her and he loved the kids, Brent and Laci, like they were his blood children. Laci was a cheerleader in middle school and she was also a cheerleader in high school. And after she graduated from high school, she went to California Polytechnic State University. This is when her and Scott met. Scott was going to this same college. It is said that Laci went to the restaurant that Scott was working at and she thought he was so cute. She wrote her phone number down on a piece of paper to give to him, and allegedly at first he crumbled up the piece of paper and threw it away because he did not realize that her phone number was on it. She ended up going back and giving him her phone number again, and she went home and told her mother that she met the man that she was going to marry. So it was kind of like, in Laci's eyes, love at first sight. Now, as the relationship became more serious, Scott put his pro golf dreams to the side, and he started a business career. After dating Laci for 2 years, Scott and Laci moved in together. Then in 1997, the two of them got married, and it was just a beautiful wedding. She made a beautiful bride, and Scott made a very handsome groom. Scott and Laci went on to open up their own sports bar together, which is very interesting because Scott's family owned their own business, family business, as well as Laci came from the dairy farm family business, and the both of them ended up opening their own business together, this sports bar, and they named it The Shack. They decided to sell it though, and they moved to Modesto in 2000 to try to start a family together. They bought a 3-bedroom home, and Laci took a part-time job substitute teaching. Scott got a pretty decent job with a fertilizer company, and he was making $5,000 a month salary at this point, which $5,000 a month salary is good money now, but it was really, really good money back then. Now, according to Laci's family, Laci was a really devoted wife. She wanted to be the perfect wife. I think a lot of people watching this can relate. She wanted to be the one that took care of her husband. She wanted to have a family with her husband. She enjoyed cooking. She loved entertaining. She really enjoyed watching Martha Stewart. She was the life of the party. She loved serving others. And she really took her job as a wife very seriously. In 2002, Laci found out that she was pregnant and she was going to be due on February 10th of 2003. When the two of them found out that they were having a boy, Laci and Scott decided to name him Connor. Now, from just this information right here, things may sound perfect, and we've seen this before. I mean, it's love at first sight. They met while they were in college. Oh, the romantic story. He was working at a restaurant. He accidentally threw away her number. She goes home and calls her mom and says, I met the man I'm going to marry. She does end up marrying him. They move back to where her family is. They're going to start their own family. She's a substitute teacher. He gets a great job. They have a nice house. She's pregnant. They're going to have a boy. Everything looks perfect. But sadly, things were far from perfect. According to Scott, on December 24th of 2002, he woke up that morning and he had plans that he was going to go golfing. So this was Christmas Eve. So he's going to go golfing. At this point, Laci is almost 8 months pregnant. And he said he woke up and he saw her. And then when he got ready to go golfing and he got ready to go leave the house, this is when he decided that it was too cold to golf, that he was going to go fishing at the Berkeley Marina instead. Scott says when he last saw Laci at the house that morning, that this was around 9:30 a.m. He said that she was watching Martha Stewart and she was getting ready to mop the floor and bake some cookies and take their family dog, Mackenzie, for a walk. See, according to Laci's mom, they had plans for Christmas and Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, they were going to all do celebrating or spending time together at Laci's parents' house. And then the whole family was going to come to Laci's house on Christmas. So she's there baking cookies and cleaning up, 8 months pregnant. He's going to go golfing. He decides it's too cold. I'll get in my boat around the water and go fishing instead. Nevertheless, at around 10:30 a.m., a neighbor said that they found Mackenzie, which was their dog, alone outside of the Peterson home. She thought that this was really weird, but she didn't notice anything that was out of order, no windows broken or anything like that. So she just put Mackenzie back in the Petersons' backyard. Later that day, around 2:15 p.m., Scott called and left a message for Laci.
Hey, beautiful. I just left a message at home. 2:15. I live in Berkeley. I won't be able to get to Villa Farms to get that basket for Papa. I was hoping you would get this message and go on out there. I'll see you in a bit, sweetie. Love you. Bye.
End of message.
Scott said when he got home, he saw Laci's car in the driveway, but that the house was empty. He says that he noticed Mackenzie was in the backyard, but he just assumed that Laci's mother had put her back there and that she had picked Laci up. Scott says when he went inside, he put his clothes in the washing machine and he went and took a shower. After he took a shower, he allegedly went and ate some pizza, sat down, and he chilled for a little bit. And this is when he decided, wait a minute, where is Laci? He called Laci's mother, Sharon, When he called her, he asked if Laci was with her, and Sharon said no. And according to Sharon, he goes, well, she's missing then. Of course, then, Laci's mother's in a complete tizzy, like, what do you mean she's missing? This is her 8-month pregnant daughter. It was at this point that Scott and Laci's stepfather reported Laci missing just before 6 p.m. that evening.
She's 8 months pregnant. She took her dog for a walk in the park. The dog came home with just a leash shot.
Laci's parents immediately came over to Scott and Laci's home. Laci's mother said that after she found out that the dog was in the backyard with the leash still attached, and that, the neighbor had saw the dog walking outside, she thought maybe her daughter took the dog for a walk at the park down the road, which didn't make a lot of sense because Laci was quite pregnant at the time, and for her to be out walking the dog like that, but Laci, she's always trying to do the right thing, and Scott said that that was her plan for the day. So she went down to the park to look for her. Now, down at this park is a kind of like a steep hill that goes into the water. And Sharon was so concerned that she could have slid down the hill into the water. 2 detectives came and responded to the missing persons call. When they got to the Peterson home, they found Laci's keys, they found her wallet, they found her jewelry, her sunglasses were all inside of her purse, and they were hanging in her closet. Now, in that moment, the detective thought that Scott was acting a little bit strange, like he was so calm, cool, and collected, that it was a little off-putting to the detective, especially the fact that his wife is missing. She's almost 8 months pregnant. It's Christmas Eve. This is not like her, and he was very nonchalant about everything. The detective felt like Scott didn't even really act concerned that Laci was missing, even when he brought him in to interview her.
Pretty much, Scott, all I'm going to do, let's just go over what we already talked about so I can make some notes. See if you remember something that maybe you don't know you remember. So, today, just tell me about the morning.
Okay. I don't know what time I got up. Probably Laci got up and went and assumed she had some cereal for breakfast. She eats right when she wakes up, otherwise she gets sick because she's pregnant. I laid around in bed longer. I got up at, 8 o'clock probably or so. Showered. And we were watching her favorite show, Martha Stewart. Watched a little bit of that.
You didn't watch the whole thing, though?
No.
You remember what part you saw? I mean, I don't know what.
Some cooking deal. I don't know.
Okay.
Cookies of some sort. They're talking about what to do with meringue.
And I can't remember. Your house, you had the converted garage area. Is that your TV room, like? Or
Yeah.
Is that where you were then? Okay. Did you eat any breakfast?
Yeah, edible cereal.
Okay. And then what? When did you realize you were going to go fishing?
Oh, that was a morning decision. It's either
That was a morning
go
decision.
play golf at the club or go fishing.
Okay.
Seemed too cold to go play golf at the club, so just decided to 9:30 or whatever than that.
Mm-hmm.
Just told her what she was going to do for the day, and
Okay, so she told you what she was going to do for the day.
yeah.
And what was that?
She's going to finish cleaning up. Like I said, she's mopping the kitchen floor. Take the dog for a walk, and then she's going to the store to buy for Christmas morning breakfast tomorrow. And that was going to be involved prep. So that was her afternoon, just prepping the breakfast, and she's going to make gingerbread cookies for tonight.
So at this point, everyone is looking for Laci. Missing posters were posted all over the place, and even strangers were praying for her and looking for her safe return. I mean, this spread like wildfire. Detectives told the media that they did not believe that Laci just decided to leave without contacting any of her family, and it would be completely out of character for her. Now, during this time, naturally, people are looking at the husband like, suspicious. You're going to leave your pregnant wife on Christmas Eve and go fishing? Like, yeah, right. Who does that? However, Laci's family really stood up for Scott. They really portrayed Scott and Laci's marriage as like the perfect marriage and them being the perfect couple. And because of this, this kind of disarmed the public in the beginning, and they just assumed that it was true.
She and Scott are just so much in love. They're just, I think everybody envies their relationship. They're just perfect together. They have a wonderful life. They're looking forward to having their baby. They've waited a long time. They've tried for a long time to have a baby, and she finally became pregnant. And this is just the center of her world, is to have her baby and be with her husband.
Hours turned into days and turned into nights and then turned into weeks. I cannot imagine how long and drowned out this felt, especially when Christmas came the next day and Laci still was not heard from or found, or nobody knew where she was. Like, imagine that Christmas. In January of 2003, it became known that Scott had had multiple affairs. Most recently, he had an affair with a woman at this time named Amber Frey. And even if you don't know about this whole case, you probably heard the name Amber Frey. I mean, it rings a bell. You're like, wait a minute, Amber Frey, Amber Frey. That name was everywhere. Amber actually went to the police after seeing Scott on the news and learning that he was a person of interest in Laci's disappearance. She went and told the detectives that she had met Scott on November 20th and that he initially had told her that he was single. See, she had a friend that introduced the two of them, and she thinks she's dating this guy and he's single. She said 2 weeks before Laci went missing, though, Scott just came out of the blue and told her that he was actually a widower and that this would be his first Christmas without his wife. So on December 9th, Scott goes to Amber and sits her down and says, hey, I haven't exactly told you everything. I lost my wife. I was married. It's hard to talk about. And this is going to be my first Christmas without her. This is on December 9th. Come to find out later, the reason why he went to her and told her that was because there was a mutual that found out that he was dating Amber Frey and basically came and told Scott, if you don't tell Amber about this relationship, I'm going to tell her. So he went to Amber and said, listen, I wasn't honest with you. I've been married before, but I lost my wife, and this will be my first Christmas without her. He left it pretty vague, and it seems like Amber thought when he said he lost his wife that he meant that she had passed away. However, at this time, Laci was still very much alive and pregnant and getting ready to have their first child. When the detectives found this out, you can just imagine they became very suspicious. They wondered if this is when Scott had decided that he wanted Laci out of the picture altogether. So they asked Amber to call Scott and to record her phone calls with him, hoping to get Scott to confess. After many conversations between Amber and Scott, recorded conversations, there came a point where the detectives went to Laci's family and told them about the affair. Sharon, Laci's mom, says as soon as she saw the pictures the detective showed her of Amber and Scott together, she said that was the exact moment that she believed in her heart that Scott had killed her daughter. By this point, Laci's case was making national headlines in the media, and so Sharon, Laci's stepfather, Rod, and Laci's brother, Brent, immediately went out and told reporters that they were withdrawing their support from Scott.
I would like Scott to know that I trusted him and stood by him in the initial phases of my sister's disappearance. However, Scott has not been forthcoming with information regarding my sister's disappearance, and I'm only left to question what else he may be hiding.
However, Scott hadn't actually been named a suspect officially yet, though. Maybe by public opinion, but not by the police. But then not long after Laci's family made that statement, Amber gave a press conference herself, and mind you, talk about being brave to come out, because every headline and magazine back then referred to Amber as the mistress. I mean, it wasn't even until I could start doing research on the internet myself that I realized that she was not actually a mistress. She had no idea that he was married.
Okay, first of all, I met Scott Peterson November 20th, 2002. I was introduced to him. I was told he was unmarried. Scott told me he was not married. We did have a romantic relationship. When I discovered he was involved in the Laci Peterson disappearance case, I immediately contacted the Modesto Police Department. Although I could have sold the photos of Scott and I to tabloids, I knew this was not the right thing to do. For fear of jeopardizing the case or the police investigation, I will not comment further. Very sorry for Laci's family and the pain that this has caused them, and I pray for her safe return as well. I would appreciate to my friends and acquaintances to refrain from talking about me to the media for profit or recognition. I am a single mother of a 23-month-old child, and I ask to respect my privacy. Thank you.
Some people believe at this point Scott was trying to do damage control because he started doing more TV interviews, and in one specifically, he said that he was so glad that Amber came out and told her story, and he even admitted to Laci about the affair.
Had you told anyone? Did you tell police?
Told the police immediately.
When?
That was the first night we were together. The police, I spent with the police.
You told them about her?
Yeah, from December 24th on.
That wasn't true, and Scott Peterson called us after the interview to set the record straight. He said he never told the police about his affair with Amber Frey, but claims he did tell his wife.
Did your wife find out about it?
I told my wife.
When?
In early December.
Did it cause a rupture in the marriage?
It was not a positive, obviously. It's inappropriate. But it was not something that we weren't dealing with.
A lot of arguing?
No. I can't say that even, she was okay with the idea. But it wasn't anything that would break us apart.
There wasn't a lot of anger?
No.
Do you really expect people to believe that an 8.5-month pregnant woman learns her husband has had an affair and is saintly and casual about it? Accommodating? Makes a peace with it?
Well, you don't know. No one knows our relationship with us.
Now, a lot of things were happening around this time because now we're into January. We start moving into February and still no sign of Laci anywhere. All these theories were going around, but a lot of people were looking towards Scott. Detectives would later say that they went to the DA and they're like, we have enough circumstantial evidence to arrest him. And the DA told them, you don't have a body, you don't have a case. So they couldn't do anything about it. Meanwhile, allegedly, Scott was trying to sell the home. He was trying to sell it quick. He had started taking things and moving them into the nursery that they had made for baby Connor and was just using it as a storage room. And some people even said that he was trying to sell the home completely furnished as is, like just wanting to get rid of it. He sold Laci's car. I mean, a lot of people felt like he was not acting in a way a husband that was expecting their wife and their son to come home eventually should act. But Scott would later say that he was trying to sell everything because when his wife came home, they would definitely not be moving back into that home. But then on April 13th of 2003, and I want to say that again, April 13th, she went missing Christmas Eve of 2002. Days turns into weeks, turns into months, the agony that the family had to be going through. On April 13th of 2003, this couple was out walking their dog. They were walking their dog by this water edge, and they came across the decomposing body of a full-term male infant in this marshy area in the San Francisco Bay Shore. As you guys can imagine, word was spreading fast, but not as fast as the word would spread the very next day when someone found the body of a recently pregnant woman washed up on the eastern shoreline of the bay, just 1 mile from where the infant was found. The body was quite decomposed to the point that it was pretty unrecognizable. The body was just the torso part. It was missing most of everything else, legs, arms, and even the head. But after DNA testing was done, it was confirmed that these were Laci's remains. The exact date of Laci's death was never determined, but it is said that her cervix was completely intact. Allegedly, internally, Laci was completely empty except for her uterus, which is what they believe protected Connor. The pathologist determined that Connor did pass in utero and that he had been expelled from Laci's body after the fact. This is around the time the FBI and the detectives ended up getting a warrant to search Scott Peterson's home. And this is one of the most intriguing parts to me. The detectives go to the home where Scott is. They're like, hey, listen, we would like for you to sign this paper saying that you're going to allow us to search your home. Now, Scott did not know that in their pocket, they had a search warrant, but they were seeing if he was going to willingly let them search the home. That's when he looked at the paper and looked back at the detectives and said, you don't expect me to sign this without a lawyer, do you? That's when the detectives told Scott, hey, we got a warrant anyways. We're going to search the home. And Scott said this.
We obtained a search warrant for his house. And we went in and he was reading the newspaper at the dining room table. So we give him this form and it says, I give consent for us to search all that stuff. And all he has to do is sign it and we could search. And he picks it up, he reads it, and he's like, you don't expect me to sign this without a lawyer, do you? Well, we weren't sure, but we have a search warrant. And he's like, he looks right at me and says, Al, where's the trust? I mean, that's what he says to me. Where's the trust?
This is when they found hair on a pair of pliers that was in Scott's fishing boat that did match Laci's DNA after they tested it. They also found a homemade anchor in Scott's boat. Now listen to this. When Scott was asked about it, he said that he made the anchor using a 90-pound bag of concrete and used the leftovers of the bag to repair his driveway. However, a detective would later say that he found evidence that indicated that 5 different anchors had been made. So they believed that he made 5 big cement anchors before were missing. There was only 1 anchor left. So 4 anchors were missing. It is believed that Scott could have used them to sink Laci's body. Just like we spoke about earlier, the detectives go back to the DA. They're like, hey, you said get a body. We have the body. An arrest warrant was served, and Scott was arrested on April 18th of 2003 near a golf course where he said that he was meeting his father and his brother for a game of golf. Now get this. Where Scott was going to meet his brother and his father for golfing in this town was very close to the border of Tijuana, Mexico. When the cops ended up pulling him over so they could arrest Scott, he had just happened to dye his hair and grew out a goatee. And he dyed his goatee too. So now he was blonde, and we all know that he was naturally dark-headed. So he just happened to dye his hair blonde around this time. When they searched his car, they found all this random stuff, all these random items. Now, again, I want y'all to envision, they're pulling him over after this. He looks like a totally different person. In the car, he has $15,000 in cash, 12 Viagra tablets, because, you know, you got to make sure you got all the essentials. He had a bunch of survival gear. He had camping equipment. He had several different changes of clothes. He had 4 cell phones, 2 driver's license. He had his driver's license and his brother's driver's license, and a bunch of other like random stuff. He had an axe. He had a snorkel. He had a snorkel set, and it just very strange things to have driving around in his car with him, along with the cash, the extra ID, the multiple phones, and looking completely different right next to the Mexico border. Now, Scott's father says that Scott used his brother's driver's license to get a resident discount at the golf course, and that Scott had been living out of his car because of all of this like media attention that he had been getting. However, investigators saw this as an indication that Scott had planned to flee to go to Mexico. After they arrested him, they brought him in, they charged him with 2 felony counts of murder with premeditation and special circumstances. Scott went on to plead not guilty. Now, before the trial began, the judge ended up having to move it because of all of the media attention, and there was a concern that Scott would not get a fair trial. Scott's trial began on June 1st of 2004, and it was heavily covered by the media. I mean, there was all kind of people camping out outside the courtroom, wanting to see what was going to happen. It was very much a Casey Anthony type of vibe. In opening statements, the prosecution said that they would prove that Scott had killed Laci because of the affair that he was having with Amber. They pointed out how strange Scott's behavior was in the days before and after Laci was reported missing. They said that Scott had told some people that he went golfing and that he didn't go fishing that day. And then they also brought up the fact that he tried to sell her car and their house too. The prosecution believed that Scott had like a bunch of different motives to ending Laci's life. They said that he was tired of his marriage and that he felt pressure of her pregnancy and that he wanted to continue his affair with Amber. They believed that Scott possibly smothered Laci in the early morning hours or maybe even the night before, wrapped her up in a tarp, and took her to the marina in the boat to dump her body. Now, the defense, which mind you, the defense that came on for Scott was no public defender. The prosecution, they were definitely out experted, I guess. The prosecution had their work cut out for them because the defense team that Scott had came to play. Do you hear me? As a matter of fact, I even heard some of the jurors speak, and they said that in the beginning of the trial, they believed Scott was innocent, that Scott didn't do this. So when the defense gave their opening statements, they did admit that, Scott had this affair and that it was very terrible, but what happened to Laci had nothing to do with Scott. They were basically 2 different situations. Like, yes, Scott, he's a cheater. That was gross. He shouldn't have done that. However, he had nothing to do with Laci's disappearance, and he would not ruin his whole life over a couple dates that he had with Amber. And at that point, I think it was only 4 dates that he had went on with Amber. The defense also said that the police had completely rushed their theory and that they had very little forensic evidence. They dismissed the hair found on the pliers in Scott's boat because he lived with Laci and it would not be unusual to find Laci's hair there or basically anywhere. They said that Laci had actually been out on that boat a few days before her disappearance. Amber, the bombshell witness, the media-labeled mistress, who was not a mistress, again, she had no idea that he was married, she got up there to testify, and those recorded phone calls were played between her and Scott. And mind you, I heard Amber say that when she was setting Scott up, basically, and talking to him and acting like everything was normal, but also recording the calls for the police, she thought she was just helping the cops. She had no idea those calls were going to be played in court and later for the world. But one call specifically that they played, which was a conversation between Amber and Scott right after Laci went missing and right before they were going to have her like candlelight vigil, Scott was on the phone telling Amber that he was in Paris when he was not really in Paris.
Amber, it's me, are you there?
Yes, are you having a good time?
I'm near the Eiffel Tower. New Year's celebration is unreal.
This is when it also came out that on December 9th, when Scott went and told Amber about his wife that he lost and it was going to be his first Christmas without his wife, that was the same exact day that he bought the boat. He bought the boat on the same day that he told her that he lost his wife. It was going to be his first Christmas without her. And the whole time Laci was at home and had no idea. Amber also testified that Scott told her that he didn't want to have any kids and he was perfectly content with just being in her life and Amber's daughter's life. Because see, Amber had a daughter and that daughter was enough for him, even though he had an almost 8-month pregnant wife at home with a son they were getting ready to have named Connor. Another expert said that if he would have taken all those concrete anchors on the boat with him, it would have sunk the boat. And the other person said that it wouldn't. I don't think it would have sunk the boat. Another expert testified and said that they believed that Laci may have been dumped near where Scott claimed that he was fishing at that day. But during cross-examination, this expert said that his findings was probable but not precise. So basically, Scott's lawyers spent the trial playing down the significance of the circumstantial evidence since there was no direct evidence. I mean, most cases are based on circumstantial evidence unless you have a videotape of them doing something like maybe the Stephen Stearns that we've been talking about situation, then the rest of it is circumstantial evidence. But nevertheless, they even went on to give like this whole alternate theory. They said that they believed that Laci had been kidnapped and held until she gave birth, and then both her and Connor were dumped in the bay. But again, the prosecution's medical experts said that Connor was not born and he passed at the same time as his mother, Laci. On November 12th of 2004, the jury came back with a verdict, and it did not take them long at all. Everybody was rushed back in, and at this point, Scott's team and his family felt confident. They felt confident that he was going to be found not guilty. However, the jury came back and convicted Scott of 2 counts of first-degree murder with the special circumstances. Scott was then sentenced to death. So he was sentenced to death then. Then in June of 2020, 16 years after his conviction, the California Supreme Court heard arguments for an appeal. It was ultimately denied. However, they did overturn his DP sentence. They found that Scott's trial judge had improperly dismissed jurors who were against the DP without actually asking them whether they could put their views about that aside and stay on the jury. So Scott then was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And then most recently, March 12th of this year, 2024, Scott attended a status hearing with the LA Innocence Project, which, to be clear again, this is not the Innocence Project that is the most well-known. The LA Innocence Project is separate, and it is a nonprofit legal advocacy organization that accepted Scott's case 2 months prior to this hearing with what they claim they have is new evidence that supports that Scott is innocent. One claim is that on part of Laci's leg, there was about a 15-inch piece of duct tape. They want that tested for DNA. Now, can you imagine if that duct tape had anybody else's DNA on it? There was another claim that there was a burglary right across the street from the Peterson home in December of 2002, around the same time that Laci went missing. The neighbors that lived across the street from Laci were out of town from Christmas Eve morning, that's the day that she went missing, till the 26th. That robbery happened in that time frame. This was brought up in Scott's original trial, but the prosecution said that it happened on the 26th after Laci went missing, and that it was completely unrelated to Laci's disappearance. The LA Innocence Project, on the other hand, says that they believe that the burglary did in fact happen on the morning of Laci's disappearance. And it looks like that is when it happened, because all the media attention, all the people searching for Laci, Christmas Eve, Christmas, the day after, why would somebody go and burglarize that house with all them people out there? This LA Innocence Project also claims that Laci's jewelry that she had on was stolen and later pawned. Also, the LA Innocence Project wants a mattress that was found in an orange van tested for DNA. This van was found right up the road from the Peterson home on Christmas Day, literally the day after she went missing, and the mattress had blood stains all over it, and the van had been set on fire. I mean, that's quite suspicious, right? The prosecution has said that they believe that this DNA testing is unnecessary because it was already done in 2013 and in 2019, and they still believe that Scott is guilty. But again, DNA testing is more advanced now. So this is all still ongoing, and we will see what happens with that. It looks like the judge has allowed for this piece of duct tape DNA to be tested. So we're going to see what happens. And Scott Peterson wants another trial. Me and my husband Jeremy just watched the new Netflix documentary that came out. That is Laci Peterson. It's a 3-part series, and it's really worth watching because I did find out stuff that I did not know before. And Miss Sharon, Laci's mother, oh my gosh, that is such a strong woman. Wow. Just watching her, like, oh my goodness. It is definitely worth the watch. After watching it and even looking at all the evidence, I still believe that Scott did it. However, there's a new documentary coming out later this month on Peacock that looks like it's going to be leaning towards the LA Project side to try to prove Scott's innocence. I'm open to it, but I don't think so. And there's part of me that would like to see a new trial if there was balls that were dropped 20-something years ago. But there's also part of me that goes, if he's guilty, man, don't put the family through this again, especially Sharon. She has lost her husband, the one that basically raised Laci, and Laci's father has passed away now too. And she lost her daughter and her first grandbaby. You know, I mean, she has been through so much. Don't put her through it if it's unnecessary. Sharon, Laci's mother, wrote a book for Laci, and it was a #1 New York Times bestseller. All of the proceeds from that book go towards Laci and Connor's search and rescue fund. I think he was the golden boy. He reminds me of kind of Chris Watts, right? Chris Watts was the golden boy. Never could do anything wrong, seemed like the perfect husband, but buried all these emotions and snapped and did what he did. I think something very similar was going on with Scott, except for I think he started his affairs too. And I think that he did not want to taint his golden boy image of getting a divorce, leaving his pregnant wife, which allegedly Miss Sharon said that at some point her daughter Laci called her and said that Scott did not want to have a baby. And all of a sudden he had changed his mind. And I think that he did not want to taint his golden boy image, and so he thought he found a way to get rid of her. And I believe he smothered her, he put her in that boat, and he tied those anchors to her, and he never expected for her to surface. I think that when she started to decompose, the body started to fall apart, rise, and that's why Connor and her washed up within days of each other and were found. If they were thrown in there separately, they would have been found at separate times. I believe when the body began to break apart, that is when Connor was expelled and they eventually washed up on shore around the same time. And I think that Scott did it. I'm open. I'm going to watch this Peacock documentary and see what the LA Innocence Project has to say, but I still think he did it. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comment section down below. Other than that, I love y'all. Thank y'all so much for watching this video. If you want to buy Miss Sharon's book, it is a way to give back and also be able to read her writings as well. Let me know what y'all think. I love you guys. I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see y'all next week. Love y'all. Bye.